Lions are one of the biggest cats in the world and have dominated Africa for many years thanks to their impressive size. There are now thousands of lions in captivity all around the world who are at the front line of helping to get their breed off the vulnerable species list. They are some of the most valuable animals in the world. White lions are often chosen for breeding programs thanks to their unique color, but they don't always successfully pass on their genes to the next generation. This is why it's so important to maintain these rare lions. Although keepers want to conserve as many lions as they can, sometimes they are left with no choice. This rare lioness was nearly euthanized until something miraculous happened. Sheila is one of the many lions that has grown up in captivity over the years, but it wasn't her choice. Sheila was stolen from the wild. This lioness was then used as part of the entertainment industry in Texas, where she was dragged around to different shows all over the country. As if that wasn't bad enough, Sheila would also appear in photo shoots with random strangers who would all grab at the lion while she was forced to sit still and pose for the pictures. All this treatment was brutal on Sheila, and it wasn't long before the effects of her life began to show. Time was running out. Amazingly, Sheila was given a second chance at life in July 2009. The Department of Agriculture finally arrived to take the lioness to safety after years of being forced around. Sadly, things weren't looking good. Sheila was incredibly underweight by the time the department arrived. Her weight also meant the lioness was weak and frail. The keepers feared she wouldn't survive for much longer. They needed to move fast if Sheila stood a chance of making it one more day. It turned out the caretaker hadn't been looking after the lion for many months. In fact, as soon as his animal's health began to deteriorate, he would cast them aside to make room for a new performer. Sadly, Sheila's health had begun to affect her performances, meaning it was her time to be put on the shelf. So many animals had suffered the same fate over the years. Now Sheila couldn't even stand up on her own as she had grown so weak. Unfortunately, the department couldn't give the lioness the care she needed to make it through, so they were forced to find somewhere else for her to live. That's where the InSync Wildlife Rescue and Education Center stepped in to help out. The center cares for stranded animals and was ready to nurse Sheila back to health. As much as they wanted to help, it looked as though the keepers were left with only one option. Surely there had to be another way. The keepers were determined to help Sheila any way they could. They even began to hand-feed the lioness to encourage her to eat. Although she was taking the food, Sheila just couldn't grow strong enough to stand on her own. Her feet would often slip out from underneath her as she tried to move around. The keepers knew they had to think about the animal's interest. It was time to consider the option of euthanizing this lioness. The situation was already hard, but it was made even tougher because Sheila was a rare lioness. The feline had a rare gene called the chinchilla gene. This color inhibitor means she's a lot lighter than other lions and stands out amongst the crowd. Losing this lioness would be a massive loss to the species and was made even tougher after everything that Sheila had been through over the years. Unfortunately, it looked as though the keepers didn't have much choice. As if all her other conditions weren't enough already, Sheila had also been diagnosed with a lack of vitamin A and toxoplasmosis. The condition is only found in cats and is when parasites mix with the victim's blood. The signs of toxoplasmosis include enlarged lymph nodes, anorexia, disorientation, apparent blindness, lethargy, and reduced coordination. Sheila was exhibiting many of these signs. Could the keepers have found what was causing her to act so strangely after all? They had to hold out hope. The only way Sheila had a hope of surviving was if she completed a course of antibiotics. The problem was she needed to eat them, and the lioness was still refusing to eat. There was no way the keepers would be able to give her the care she required if Sheila wouldn't help herself. Although no one wanted to give up on the lioness, the keepers didn't want to sit back and watch her condition deteriorate. It all kept coming back to one choice. The keepers were all willing to give it one last chance. They quickly started the course of antibiotics, but they were about to be in for a long journey. Sheila had already been through so much, and they had no idea if she had the strength left in her to fight off the illness. Plus, being so underweight was about to cause even more issues for the lioness. That was until something amazing happened. For the first time, it looked as though there was a glimmer of hope. As the days continued to pass, Sheila continued to grow stronger and stronger. How could this be happening? The odds might have been stacked against her, but it seemed as though Sheila was determined to make it to the other side, or at least get as close as she could. No one could believe the medication was working so quickly. It was like a miracle. The keepers didn't want to get too excited, but they couldn't help but remain hopeful it would work. As if that wasn't amazing enough already, Sheila even began to regain strength in her legs. Although she still struggled to walk on occasion, Sheila was able to hop a lot easier than before. The lioness was even able to swallow with more ease, meaning eating the antibiotics was much less work than at the start of the journey. However, the keepers couldn't help but still be confused. What was making Sheila eat after so many weeks of refusing food? It was only then the keepers noticed a pull for Sheila to improve. She wasn't the only lion at the center. Sheila lived next door to 6-year-old Khan, a male lion. That wasn't all. Khan and Sheila had more in common than met the eye, as Khan had arrived at the center after being rescued from his own tragic situation. The pair had lived similar lives, and now it looked as though they somehow understood the other. It was as if they were helping each other through the cage. Khan had also been used as part of the entertainment industry. However, this lion was used for private parties instead. Sadly, Khan had been subject to a life in a small space that meant he had never grown as big as other male lions would in the wild. Plus, he now weighed around 100 pounds less than a healthy lion of his age. This lion needed a lot of treatment if he was ever going to make it out the other side. Khan's story didn't end there. All his years in captivity had caused him to become very stressed and aggressive. In fact, the lion even chewed off the end of his own tail as a way to cope with it all. Khan was also terrified of humans. He needed plenty of work, but thankfully Khan was able to accept his new help. The lion ended up growing stronger thanks to all the treatment, and now it looked as though he was going to repay the favor. Khan and Sheila had been living next to each other during their time at the center, but now it was time for them to meet. They needed to have some interactions with other lions. The keepers decided that as long as there was no fighting, the pair could play with each other. Thankfully, they were too weak to have the strength to fight, and Khan and Sheila hit it off immediately. It looked as though some time together was all they both needed to heal. Time continued to tick by, and it seemed as if the lions were getting stronger by the day. Could the answer to their treatment have been so simple after all? After all, this solution had helped Khan and Sheila better than any medication ever could have. However, it was more than just the keepers that had brought these two lions together. It was fate that had given them the chance to meet after living such separate yet similar lives all this time. Although the two lions were getting along, the keepers knew they had to have supervised visits to make sure they didn't hurt each other as they continued to grow stronger. To start, Khan and Sheila were only allowed to be together for a few hours. They were then left for longer and longer periods until they could be trusted to play together alone. All their time together was just what they needed, and now it seemed as though the lions could be ready to take their relationship to the next level. After 3 months of playing together, Khan and Sheila finally had all their dreams come true with a brand new adventure, a new enclosure. Finally, they could be together at last. The enclosure was the perfect size for the pair of them to grow and explore as they continued to recover from their ordeals. Now they were bigger. Sheila had become the boss of the relationship. However, the lions were still happier than they had ever been before. It seems as though Sheila isn't the only one in love. Khan loves to look after Sheila in any way he can. While these two are settling into a life of bliss, their previous owner has since been banned from ever keeping animals ever again. However, people aren't happy with the result, and many are now petitioning for a stricter sentence. At least Khan and Sheila can now enjoy the lives they have always dreamed about with a fellow lion by their side.